Hi, it's great to see you again.
Me too.
Thank you so much for coming back.
No problem.
I think this is like our fifth session, I think. Okay. So I know you have been doing very well. I appreciate how open you've been with me. You have done very well on the homework assignments, those journals that we've been working on. I think those have definitely been looking good. Do you feel like they've been helping you at all, the CBT journals?
I do think they've been helpful a little bit. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, and I think I'm definitely seeing like an improvement in your thought process, which is
Okay.
great. So at the end of last session, we were still kind of focusing on like your career and like your goals and choices with that, and I didn't feel like we really were really able to kind of come to any kind of like point of closure. So how have you been feeling through the past week regarding your career choices?
Through the past week, I've been a little bit better
Mhm.
about how I feel about, you know, the goals that I have for myself and things of that nature.
Mhm.
So for the past week, I think that my feelings about like the career choices and goals that I have for myself have gotten a little bit better.
Okay.
I still kind of feel like there are some days where I think about, how certain things would be and how I would act in those certain situations
Mhm.
within like the counseling field. And it does tend to like bring my mood down a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of the times thinking like about future can cause like a lot of anxiety, and I know sometimes it can be helpful to kind of imagine situations, figure out how you would cope with them, because that can definitely help build knowledge. But a lot of the times that can lead to like maybe experiencing bad events just over and over and over again, and whether they end up happening or not, you've like lived through it. So that can definitely cause a lot of anxiety. And anxiety can definitely lead to like feelings of like depression and just like low mood,
Yeah.
which you said is how do you like what are your thoughts like when you're feeling really depressed in that low mood?
Um, when I get to those low moods or in those like depressive
Mm-hmm.
episodes, I just think about like, you know, like I guess like the what ifs. Like what if, I'm unsuccessful in counseling this person, or
Yes.
what if I, am unsuccessful in the counseling field in general,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't make enough money to support myself,
Mm-hmm.
or if I start a family, like will this career be enough to, will we be financially stable, things of that nature.
Okay. So not this would happen, but I think it's always good to ask how do you think you handle say you got into this career and you realized it's just not really what you want. Do you think you'd be comfortable like transitioning to something else, or how do you think that would work out for you?
Um, I don't know if I would be okay or comfortable with transitioning to something
Mm-hmm.
else. Um, I I think that I would kind of fall back into like a little bit of a depressive
Okay.
mood, because I tend to kind of, I guess the word is sulk.
Yeah.
I tend to like sulk over certain things that don't work out,
Mm-hmm.
um, especially like given my background and things like that. So
Yeah, and I mean, the great thing about the field that you're in is that you can apply it to a lot of different things. So, I mean, say you were working at one agency and you just weren't a fan of the work you were doing, you can always change to something else that's still counseling, but maybe with, a different type of group or just different coworkers, anything like that. So yeah, I guess when you're kind of maybe like ruminating on those bad possibilities, do you think it would be possible for you to kind of practice some thought blocking and just kind of say, hey, you're thinking, oh, what if I'm not good at this career? Do you think you could say to yourself, like, hey, I'm not going to think about that and try to just kind of shut that down? How do you think that would make you feel?
I think that that would be helpful
Mm-hmm.
because I do have a tendency to just take in all of those negative
Mm-hmm.
thoughts. I do have a hard time blocking
Yes.
those thoughts. So I think if I did a thought block,
Mm-hmm.
that would be very helpful.
I think one thing that's really useful with thought blocking is using counter thoughts. Um, so can you maybe right now we can keep it a low number, maybe three. Can you come up with three reasons that you could tell yourself you are going to be successful in this career? Like why you decided to go into this career, like what characteristics you felt you had for it. Can you come up with three like positive attributes of yourself
I
for
can
this career?
try. I guess one reason can be that I'm determined.
Mhm. That's definitely important.
Another reason, I like helping people.
Mm.
I like talking to people and just, finding ways that could potentially help them in their
Mhm.
lives.
Which is, yeah, all you're really trying to do.
hmm Um, hmm, I'm not sure what a third reason would be.
Well, from what I've seen of you, you're a very good conversationalist. Like, you can definitely hold. Um, I think that's definitely a important part of the job. Like, you need to be able to speak and hold yourself well, and I think you definitely do that.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so I think that was definitely like a good start. For your homework, I would like for you to, similar to the cognitive behavioral journals, maybe come up with some of your really common negative thoughts, and then give me just like two or three counter thoughts for each one. And a lot of your negative thoughts, I'm sure, are similar, so you can kind of use the same positive thoughts to kind of counter that, like whenever you need to. So don't stress about that too much. But hopefully, if you have that ready by next week, we can look over it and kind of maybe add to it, and maybe just kind of go over like how that can help you moving forward.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So I guess you said like your career leads to like depressive feelings, and you had mentioned that you were worried about not being able to like support yourself financially. Can you expand on that like a little bit, like your feelings there?
Yeah, so as of right now, I'm the not primary like breadwinner
Mm.
or like the only person that has an income in my family, but I do feel like I do feel like I'm a source of like funds all the
Yes.
time.
Okay.
As I've mentioned before, um, I have like medical bills and things like that, so those can be quite overwhelming.
Yes. Absolutely.
Um, and then also like I do help take care of my dad. So
Mm.
my dad is legally blind
Oh well.
in his left eye,
Mhm.
and then his right eye is like not so well as
Mhm.
well. On top of other medical issues that he
Okay.
has, so he's always depending on me to either like get his medication or like take him to his doctor's
Mhm.
appointments for like the co-pays and things like that. I'm always buying groceries for the
Mhm.
house or stuff like that. So
Yes.
it gets a little daunting to always be the
Oh, I'm
one
sure.
to pay for things or supply things for other people. And then, of course, like I have my own financial
Mhm.
needs. Um, and then, of course, like in the future, like I want to have a family, I want to
Mhm.
get married, things like that. And I know that costs
Oh yes.
money. So, I just know that right now with the job that I have, it's not enough. And so that
Mhm.
like gets me worried, and then I get anxious and I start panicking about
Mhm.
things, and then I just kind of fall into this depression. So,
Yes. Yeah, and I mean financial instability is always definitely very stressful. And then you mentioned your dad. I'm sure it's very difficult to kind of like play parent to your parent is definitely
hmm
always like a hard role to be
yeah.
in. Um, I'd say from that like depression, do you go anyplace else like anger wise? I know that you can kind of cycle between like the anxiety and the depression, but when you're feeling anxious, do you feel like irritable, angry? Do you like lash out at all?
Oh yeah. I can definitely say I get very irritable,
Mm-hmm.
um, very hostile sometimes. Um, I don't tend to lash out
Mm-hmm.
a lot.
Okay.
It it would take a lot for me to lash out because I do try to, compose myself as
Mm-hmm.
much as possible.
Yes.
Um, but I do get very irritable, very angry, very hostile when I do get into those like
Mm-hmm.
depressive moods. And it's more so like with my family.
Okay. So I guess what do you do when you're kind of in those moods, like to handle it? Do you keep to yourself, or is there
Yeah.
any kind of coping mechanism you have to get
Yeah,
through that?
yeah, I try to. I try to just stay by myself. I'll probably stay in my
Mm-hmm.
room or like binge watch TV
Okay.
shows or things like that, or listen to some music. And then another coping mechanism is food. I
Mm-hmm.
love food, so like I'll probably just buy a lot of food
Mm-hmm.
and keep it to myself and
Okay.
just snack every now and
Mm-hmm.
again.
Okay. And I guess how do you Maybe how do you feel about yourself when you get into like these depressive states and when you're like feeling irritable and angry? When you've kind of come out of it and you look back on it, how do you feel about yourself?
Mm, um, in a way, I kind of hate myself
Hmm.
because I hate when I get, in a sense, that low
Hmm.
to where it's like, I get angry and I get irritable because I
Yes.
don't like being angry.
Hmm. Yeah.
I don't like being hostile. Most people see me as like this bubbly person or this happy person, but
Hmm.
when I get in those moods, it gets really, really bad. And, by the time I get out of that, like depression and all that stuff, and I look back on like how I was feeling, it's like, I don't like that
Hmm.
person. I don't, yeah.
Yeah, and
So,
I mean, it's definitely going to be natural to have emotions of like depression and anger because you're human, so you're
mhm.
not always going to be able to maintain that like bubbly mood. And I would say, how do you like making those judgments of yourself? How does that affect like your self-esteem? Like, how do you feel about yourself in general?
Um, in general, I would say it's kind of 50-50
Mhm.
because in the past, like, I had very low self-esteem,
Mhm.
very low confidence. I have been trying to work more towards building up my confidence and
Yes.
self-esteem. But when it comes to like the depression and things like that, it definitely reverts back
Yes.
to, oh, well, I don't like this thing about myself, or I don't like how I did that,
Mhm.
or, I could have done this differently to maybe be like this person
Yeah.
or be better or something like that. So it definitely takes a toll on my self
Yes.
esteem.
I mean, in
Yeah.
those times, definitely, it is important to kind of give yourself permission to have feelings, because I mean, that's always going to be unavoidable. And I think that yeah, that like sort of cycling back to maybe kind of reverting back to like an earlier stage in life when your self-esteem was lower, it kind of just undoes a lot of the work that you've done over the years.
Yeah.
I would say how can you kind of maybe stop that cycle? Like we talked about thought blocking before. Do you think that would help in this situation as well?
Um,
Would that be doable for you?
I think thought blocking would help
Mhm.
because it would more so kind of stop my thoughts of, how I feel about myself, the negative
Yes.
thoughts about how I feel about myself.
Mhm.
That way I could think more positively
Yes.
about myself or how to, get through things. Yeah.
Mhm. And I guess, how have you handled those maybe in the past, like before we started working in therapy? Do you think that you are handling them better now that we've like worked on it counseling and you've worked on it at home with your journals? Do
Hmm.
you think that you are coping better?
Yeah, I do think I'm coping better. I
Mhm.
definitely think the journals have helped a
Mhm.
lot. So,
Yes, and that's definitely a good way to kind of maybe try to help train yourself to so you don't necessarily always have to go through like the cognitive process of okay, stop thinking that, start thinking this. Hopefully, your brain will kind of start to catch up to
hmm
just kind of skipping those negative thoughts. Um, and yeah, I guess when you think about the ways that you have handled this through like isolation and like snacking and stuff, obviously that's going to kind of keep you from like you said, like you don't really lash out. That's obviously going to kind of keep you from like losing your cool with other people. I guess how do you think that that has like affected you? Do you think you generally feel better? Or do you think that just kind of keeps you from acting out towards others?
um, I do think it just kind of keeps me from
Mm.
acting out towards others. Even though I love food and it does
Yes.
make me feel good,
Yeah.
I know that it's not like a permanent thing
Mm.
to all that's always going to make me feel better and be consistent.
Yeah.
I know that there's always going to be some sort of like a
Mm.
revert back to
Yes.
how I was feeling before I started,
Yeah,
isolating
absolutely.
myself or eating a lot. So,
Yeah. Are there any like activities that you enjoy? Like really like productive activities? Like do you play any instruments or do any sports or anything?
um, well, I really like painting.
Mm.
I love art. I love music. Um, yeah, I used to do those a lot.
Okay. How do you think would feel if you maybe had, well, what kind of art do you do? I'll start with that.
Just
Like
kind
painting?
of freestyle art, kind of
Okay.
at home. Like if I see something that I like, or if I see a certain picture or things like that, I'll try to like recreate that
Okay.
image, or I'll just try to paint whatever I have in my head.
Yes. I
Yeah.
mean, art can definitely be very helpful, especially for keeping you like mindful and focused on something as opposed to letting your thoughts go on these like rapid cycles. So, how do you think you feel about maybe like starting like an art project and just kind of having it there for you whenever you're feeling like overwhelmed and stressed and like angry and all of that to just kind of focus on that. Do you think that would help or how do you think that would make you feel?
I think that would definitely help a
Mhm.
lot. When I do paint, it does bring a sense of calm over
Yes.
me. And I'm very focused when I do paint, so I think that'll help quite a bit.
Okay, so yeah, I would
Hmm.
like for you like maybe sometime this week if there's something you see that like you'd like to recreate, maybe just start working on that and don't I guess push yourself to like finish like too quickly.
Hmm.
I mean just kind of have something like that that's ongoing that you can just kind of pull out or go over to every time you're feeling really overwhelmed and just take. It doesn't have to be a long time, maybe just even like 15 or 20 minutes just to be really mindful and focus on that. That can definitely kind of break you out of that like negative thought cycle.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, and then I was gonna ask, I mean, you mentioned in our very first session that you have a lot of like good friends.
Hmm.
Would you feel comfortable like when you're feeling very overwhelmed and depressed, maybe like calling someone and just having like a conversation, not necessarily about how you're feeling, but just in
Hmm.
general to maybe kind of have that like break out of isolating yourself?
Yeah, I can do that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, well, I feel like you have a few tasks that I would like for you to work on
Okay.
over the next week. It does look like we're kind of having our time come to a close. So, do you have any questions about anything that we talked about?
No questions.
Okay, I feel like we did a lot of good work. I think that we definitely identified some of your strengths and how you can handle these, and I think we identified maybe some of the connections, like how you go from being anxious to depressed to kind of isolated, and how that cycle um, works, and how maybe we can work on stopping it before it gets out of control.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you so much for coming in today,
All
and
right.
I'll look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you very much.